Hey everybody, I'm Mike with Budget Guns and Gear Reviews, and this is The Right of the People, where we use the first to defend the second every Friday night at 7 p.m. Eastern. So uncover your keyboards and fire up your fingers. It's time to join the conversation.
Hey everybody, welcome. It is Friday, the 13th of August, 2021, and this is The Right of the People. Although it is no longer Budget Guns and Gear Reviews, I still haven't gotten around to changing the intro, but, I'll get there eventually. I want to thank everybody for coming, particularly my esteemed panel. We have he who is behind enemy lines, the sourpuss, the tactical pickle, Calaveras 32 Special. How you doing, sir?
Doing just fine. It's a lovely Friday. I didn't have to go to work today, and I get to jump on with Right of the People. So all in all, a good day. And this Portland story. I was promised A teams, so we'll find out who's actually patrolling.
I assure you, it is not Hannibal, Face, BA, and Murdoch. They are nowhere near this thing. Yeah. I'd also like to welcome the irascible yet lovable Squibload, although he's not very irascible today. We got to do something about that.
Yeah, I don't know what's wrong with me. I'm in a good mood, and I'm really beginning to worry. I don't know what to think. Maybe it's because it's Friday the 13th. Maybe that's why.
It could be. It could be the prospect of everybody having all that bad luck and horrible things happening just makes you cheerful. That could be it.
Yeah. Is there a full moon tonight? Does anybody know?
I don't know. I don't know. I'd like to apologize right off the bat to everybody if you can hear some sort of droning in the background. That's my fan, because it's like in the 90s and with high humidity here in Northeast Ohio, and I got to have some air circulating in here or I'm going to sweat to death or something. So please bear with me. I do apologize. I'd like to thank everybody that's here in the chat. Got Guns and Barbecue out there, Rich White, Mike Warhorse, Artak and Daughters. Who else is out there? New York Outcast is in the house. So, yeah, if you're out there and you haven't said anything in the chat, sound off. That way I can say hi. And, this is a conversation, folks. I want to hear from you. That's I like that free exchange of ideas. I don't care if you disagree with me or not. That's fine. It's by rubbing our ideas up against each other that, we get to take a look at our own ideas and decide if we need to modify something. So I'm okay with that. All I ask is that, A, you keep it on topic and don't get off into the area of personal attacks against someone with whom you disagree, and B, keep things friendly, or not necessarily friendly, but at least respectful and PG-13 at the most. I'm trying to keep tonight's broadcast what would be considered radio friendly. I'm going to edit this one into a demo tape for a local radio station to throw my hat in a ring, see if I might happen to get a gig as a part-time fill-in talk show host. So keep your fingers crossed. Let's see. Tim KC says, turn the AC on, brother. I don't have AC, so it's fan all the way. So, yes. And yes, we can disagree and still get along, and it is rather American. One thing that's not American, though, in my opinion, is the way that the city of Portland has been run into the ground by its management. We all know how things have been, well, at least if you've been paying any sort of attention whatsoever, we know how things have been last summer and continue to be this summer with violence and protests and, Antifa types wanting to show out and raise all kinds of hell in the city. The Portland police have been cut with their funding, and they're short about 120 officers. So they're not really having an easy time keeping order in that city. Well, when the public sector fails, the private sector steps in, and I guess that is American as all get out, right? So let's go into this first topic. This is from Willamette Week, wweek.com. Old Town clubs reopen amid gunfire and ex-soldiers stationed in the street. This summer, armed men have returned to the downtown core, but for a different reason: to keep parties from turning into shootouts. By Tess Risky and Aaron Mesh from August 11, 2021. It's last call in Chinatown, and a crowd spills out of Shake Bar onto Northeast Couch Street. About 200 people stumbling, some looking for electric scooters, women barefoot and carrying their high heels. The clubgoers are met by a heavily armed guard. He stands beneath the Hung Far Low sign, clad in a bulletproof vest and desert tan tactical pants, with a 9mm pistol strapped to his leg and an AR-15 semi-automatic rifle slung over his shoulder. His name is Jean-Pierre Lafont. He's a 45-year-old veteran who lives in Gresham. He says he did a tour of duty in Bosnia with the Navy SEALs. He's 6 foot tall, wears black gloves outlined with white bones, and is delighted to talk about his work. My job is to get you home safe, he says, unless you're the perpetrator. The only way for evil to succeed is for good men to do nothing. So I'm going to do something. Lafont works for Ravencrest Force Protection Group. On the job, he goes by Reaper. His boss is codenamed Ghost. Their Northeast Portland firm bills itself as a private military contractor, the kind of firm that operates in war zones. Their latest assignment? Deployment to one block of Portland's Old Town. After a June shooting in the club's doorway, Shake's owners hired Ravencrest to secure not only the bar, but the length of Couch Street between 3rd and 4th Avenues. Nearly 2 months later, Lafont patrols this street every Friday and Saturday night, trying to prevent the latest killing in what he describes as a gang war. He finds the work gratifying. I'd rather die with my boots on, Lafont says, than die in an old folks' home hearing Christmas carols sung by Boy Scouts. Ravencrest is one of the at least 3 companies with armed guards patrolling Old Town's club scene. Downtown Portland was defined last summer by squadrons of uniformed men equipped with tear gas and guns. Federal agents, as well as police officers, sent to quell Portland's racial justice protests. This summer, armed men have returned to the downtown core, but for a different reason: to keep parties from turning into shootouts. Their presence marks the confluence of club owners' desire to reopen for business, despite City Hall's floundering attempts to grapple with the social upheaval that upended Portland after George Floyd's murder in Minneapolis sparked months of protests and nationwide demands to defund police. One of the results? A Portland Police Bureau that says it's about 120 officers slimmer, bolstering demand for private security companies like Ravencrest. This spring, the city's nightclubs reopened, in the midst of a wave of gunfire killing black people at a rate seen nowhere else in the country. Within days of reopening, bars in the city's entertainment district were packed. In fact, Old Town bar owners say July was their busiest month ever. Amid the flourishing nightlife scene, many bullets. Less than a month after a gunman opened fire at Shake Bar, an 18-year-old woman was killed in front of a row of food carts in Old Town on July 17th. The shooter wounded 6 others. But amid the booming business and gun violence, the Portland... I got to stop right there. I have to say it every time. I deny the existence of such a thing as gun violence. I maintain that there is only violence, and the tool is irrelevant. Anyhow, but amid the booming business and gun violence, the Portland Police Bureau hasn't kept pace. Following last year's budget cuts, the Bureau last July dissolved its nightlife unit, the Central Precinct Entertainment Detail. Currently, only 2 Portland police officers are assigned to the neighborhood's nightlife scene, compared to 9 before, according to Police Bureau spokesman Lieutenant Greg Pashley. Business owners and police alike say that's insufficient. There aren't enough police officers, says Jesse Burke, co-owner of the Society Hotel and president of the Old Town Chinatown Community Association. We're having to do what the government used to do. We're kind of running an underground government to keep things safe. The decreased police presence created what business owners describe as a public safety vacuum. Private security companies arrived with rifles, metal detector wands, and Kevlar vests. The strategy alarms a police captain who once oversaw the entertainment detail. We're there just to make sure that people are safe, says Central Precinct Captain Robert Simon. And introducing an AR-15 into a group of drunks, it's not the right tool for the application. We never did that. On Friday, August 6th, a line snakes around the exterior of Dixie Tavern at Northwest 2nd Avenue and Couch Street. Thumping bass emanates from inside, where rotating red and green spotlights shine on a crowded dance floor of mostly white college-age revelers, sans masks, doing the cha-cha slide. More flock to the dance floor as Bon Jovi's Living on a Prayer begins playing. When it comes time for the chorus, the DJ cuts the music and the crowd belts out the words of a song released in 1986, more than a decade before most of them were born. It's not packed yet, says Don Lenzen, Dixie Tavern's owner, gazing down at the dance floor from a second-level balcony. Lenzen says July was a record month. He attributes the surge to a hunger among young people to be social and flirt after more than a year of isolation. You've got this jubilant feeling about getting out, he said in an interview earlier that day. People want to have fun. Across West Burnside Street, another crowd of young people flocks outside of Fuse Bar. This clientele is predominantly black and Latin. I don't even know how you're supposed to pronounce that word. Latinx? Latinx? It used to be Latino. So that's just what I'm going to say. Not politically correct. Azim Patel, owner of Fuse Bar, agrees with Lenzen that pandemic fatigue is great for business. It's Sociology 101, Patel says. You had a year when people couldn't celebrate their birthdays. The whole zodiac. Beginning in 2012, Portland Police Bureau staffed a unit specifically assigned to the nightlife scene. Sam Adams, who was mayor during that time, implemented the city ordinance that paid for barricades around the entertainment district. Adams, now director of strategic innovations in Mayor Ted Wheeler's office, and he must be innovating such a fine job, says the barricades, in addition to removing vehicles from the equation, helped prevent drunken skirmishes he described as bro bumping by allowing clubgoers to walk in the street instead of squishing them onto crowded sidewalks. The entertainment detail consisted of one sergeant and up to 7 officers who patrolled outside Old Town nightclubs, which on weekend nights could draw 20,000 patrons, Lenzen says. The sergeant and those officers became experts, basically, says Pashley. It's a specialty. The entertainment detail officers patrolled on foot within the barricade, and squad cars circled the perimeter. In addition, an officer was, and still is, assigned to patrol Old Town during the night shift, which lasts from 10 p.m. to 2 a.m. During the day, entertainment detail officers often walked the neighborhood and chatted with business owners who alerted them about upcoming events so law enforcement could anticipate and prepare for large, potentially rowdier crowds. Then the COVID-19 pandemic hit. Downtown businesses went dark. And last summer, when most activity near the so-called entertainment district consisted of racial justice protests, the Portland City Council slashed the police bureau's budget by $15 million. One of the casualties, Pashley says, was the entertainment detail. We're working with bare-bones staffing, he says. It's like trying to paint a wall without enough paint. Bar owners and local neighborhood groups raised concerns about the decreased police presence during a mid-June meeting at Dixie Tavern with Captain Simone, as well as the Central Precinct Commander and a lieutenant. After this meeting, the police bureau reinstated one sergeant to the entertainment district, Simon says, bringing the total to 2. Pashley says police in Old Town can call for backup from one of about 18 officers patrolling the Central Precinct, which encompasses about 41 square miles and over 200,000 people. But the Bureau says those officers, too, are often busy responding to calls. We're at the point in the Police Bureau where anytime we add staffing to a certain unit, say the entertainment detail, we have to take it away from something else, says Simon, the Central Precinct captain. Do I cut my daytime bike team downtown to staff the entertainment detail? Old Town business owners hoped the entertainment detail would reappear in this year's budget. That didn't happen. They scrambled to replace it. As the Oregonian reported last week, Lenzen erected barricades without city permission, trying to keep cars from speeding past his nightclub. We defunded programs before we figured out what the replacement programs were, the Community Association's Burke says. The city is, in this decision-making spiral of Band-Aid on top of Band-Aid on top of Band-Aid. Among the scenes of violence, Shake Bar. On June 25th, a shooting at the nightclub's entrance sent 2 people to the hospital. Police found 28 shell casings along Northwest Couch Street. Bullets struck 8 vehicles. It's a mass murder, if anybody could shoot, says Andrew Murdoch, who owns nearby nightclub district. Got a doggone fly bothering me. Jake DeRigello was smoking a cigarette outside Shake Bar. I heard 9 shots, and they were shooting through the doorway, he recalls. I just started running. DeRigello, 25, is a photographer who takes portraits for event promoters at Shake. He says the club attracts people from across the city, some of whom are feuding online but wouldn't typically encounter each other face to face. You have people from northeast, southeast, and you put them all in a pit, Durigello says. Everybody's intoxicated. You get the wrong crowd at any bar. This one just happens to be poppin'. State business filings show Shake was purchased in 2020 by a group called Banda Brothers LLC, whose registered agent was listed as Brian Lozano. He did not respond to calls from WW seeking comment. In July, Shake hired Ravencrest Force Protection Group. The patrons exiting Shake after last call on August 6th appear nonchalant about the presence of a guard carrying a semi-automatic rifle. Perhaps it's the alcohol. One young woman in a mini dress walks up to LaFont and caresses one of his biceps. Gorgeous, gorgeous, she coos. Handsome boy. LaFont's boss, Corey Webb, stands several feet away in the center of Couch Street, scanning the crowd for handguns. My eyes are twitching from looking at people's hands, he says. We have to treat this almost like overseas. Keep your head on a swivel. Webb, 41, who uses the moniker Ghost, is an easygoing, portly man who stands 5'6". In his spare time, he drift races sports cars. After an Army tour of duty in Iraq, Webb founded Ravencrest Force Protection Group in 2017, seeking to employ veterans who didn't want to become police officers. Some guys come out of the military tired of the government, he says. On its website, Ravencrest says it will send security teams in tactical uniform to protect businesses. Within the limits of local and state law, the site explains, a uniformed security officer will take all responsible and necessary steps to protect persons and property, including the apprehension of suspects and the use of deadly force when necessary. But Webb says his men are loath to fire their weapons. Instead, he says, much of his squad's task is to provide the appearance of order. That includes pulling out the AR-15 at closing time. People leaving the club glimpse the gun, Webb says, and decide, oh, that's a big-ass gun. I'd better get out of here. Ravencrest takes other precautions. As the club prepares to close at 1:30 a.m., Webb pulls a Mercedes ML350 SUV into the intersection. The vehicle has bulletproof doors, and Webb says people smoking cigarettes on the sidewalk can duck behind the vehicle if bullets fly. Webb's greatest concern? A surface parking lot across Northwest 4th Avenue from Shake. He says patrons leave their guns and vehicles parked in the lot, and if a fight breaks out, they run back to their cars and fire toward the club. Ravencrest guards dubbed this parking lot the Boneyard, after a field of burned-out cars in Iraq where snipers would fire on U.S. soldiers. This is our worst nightmare, this parking lot, Webb says. His team will pursue shooters across the road and into the maze of parked cars, he adds, but Webb has grown uneasy about this assignment. I wouldn't be downtown, he says, if they weren't paying us a king's ransom. Others are skeptical that a security detail of armed ex-soldiers is the right tool for the job. Lenzen, the Dixie Tavern proprietor, says his security team, which he trains in-house, is unarmed. That's for two reasons. First, Lenzen says most shootings in the entertainment district occur outside or from a drive-by vehicle. Second, he fears that a firearm in a crowded nightlife setting would injure bystanders. I worry about what's potentially in the background, he says. When there's an armed security officer and somebody shooting at them, what are they going to shoot back at? Portland police aren't thrilled either. Officers express concern that drunken clubgoers might not be able to distinguish between a cop and a guard. Some of the customers who may have a few libations or may be a little intoxicated, they might not understand the rules of engagement with these separate and different companies, says Captain Simon, and that presents a lot of confusion both for the patrons and for the owners. They don't know what they're getting and what they're paying for. It's in a weird spot down there right now. Private security guards in Portland occasionally use deadly force. On May 29th, a guard for Cornerstone Security Group shot and killed 49-year-old Freddie Nelson Jr. at Delta Park Center, Oregon Public Broadcasting reported. And in 2019, a private security guard shot and killed 42-year-old Eugene Farr Jr. outside the Dream On Saloon on Southeast Stark Street. Simon says prior to the lockdown, he observed no more than 2 private security firms in the nightlife scene. Today, he says, there are about 5. Now it's a little more fragmented. At least 2 additional security firms patrol downtown streets with guns. One of them, Portland Patrol, has long worked for the Portland Business Alliance and is authorized to carry weapons by a contract with the city. The other, Echelon Protective Services, patrols Ankeny Alley, the pedestrian plaza outside Voodoo Donut. Its officers, dressed in blue uniforms, carry handguns and side holsters. Echelon's owner, Dustin Alex Stone, a former police officer in Kletzkani, Oregon, says his guards act as a deterrent. It's like a scarecrow in the field, he says. Stone characterizes Echelon's work in part as outreach to the unhoused community. That's what security companies need to do, he says. They need to be helping people, even just handing out a cigarette to somebody. Caitlin Day, a homeless advocate with the Western Regional Advocacy Project, has tracked the expansion of private security in downtown Portland. She says Echelon has overstepped its boundaries by patrolling public streets. It seems like, increasingly, private security is starting to take over public space, which is a very alarming trend, Day says. They don't seem to be following any laws at all. In Oregon, private security guards receive certification from the same state agency that trains police, the Department of Public Safety Standards and Training. Statewide, DPSST has certified 14,923 unarmed security guards who completed 14 hours of training, and 1,861 armed security guards who underwent an additional 24 hours of training. But it is difficult to say how frequently state-certified private security guards use force of any kind. That's because DPSST does not require incident reporting. Instead, it relies on complaints submitted by the public, police, and security companies themselves. A lot of individual companies really hold their employees accountable, and they do have them fill out those types of reports to keep them on file, says Michelle Morrison, a certification and licensing background investigator with the agency. We can't be out and everywhere. DPSST can investigate complaints and revoke certifications of individual security workers who violate rules, Morrison says, but it cannot yet penalize private security firms that have a pattern of bad practices. In response to public records requests from WW, DPSST says neither Echelon nor Ravencrest have generated complaints, but that there are open and active professional standards complaints against the executive managers for these companies. Morrison says the agency discourages certified private security staff from wearing uniforms or driving vehicles that resemble law enforcement. Oregon has no rules about the type of firearms that guards may carry, she adds. Sam Adams says he understands why Old Town and Chinatown bars have resorted to hiring private security, but he is concerned about the open display of firearms. It is startling to see people carrying weapons out, he says. Aw, poor feller. I don't think it's necessary to show that kind of level of force. It makes people unnecessarily nervous and it's counterproductive. You don't have to have that display of armament. In the early hours of Sunday, August 8th, it happens. A fight breaks out inside Shake. A woman in a striped jumpsuit is hauled out of the club by one of her friends, screaming curses and demanding to go back inside. Soon, the Ravencrest guards are trying to clear her and her friends from Couch Street. Webb pulls an orange, non-lethal pepper gun from a pouch in his vest and points it at a young man in a yellow silk shirt who refuses to leave the road. The man salutes Webb, sneering. As his friends try to pull him away from the guards, he leans over the street barricades and says slowly and ominously, "You know what's been going on." What's been going on for months is bloodshed in the streets of Portland. In that context, Webb and LaFont view the young man's meaning as unmistakable. He's threatening to kill them. Ravencrest calls the cops. 2 Portland police officers arrive and move a squad car with flashing lights into the intersection, announcing they'll search the perimeter once the bar empties. One officer glances at LaFont's rifle. "You're more outfitted than me right now," he says. 30 minutes later, a burst of gunfire comes from the direction of the boneyard. 4 shots. Pop, 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 pop. Police officers rush, guns drawn, up Northwest 4th Avenue. LaFont levels his AR-15, aiming into the night. The crowd keeps milling in the street, edgy but not leaving. A Shake patron tugs on LaFont's vest, trying to get his attention. "Get the F out of here," LaFont shouts. "There are people shooting." Minutes later, LaFont lowers his rifle and lights a cigarette. He's upset, not just by the gunfire, but by the people ignoring it. His eyes are wide and he looks like he's about to cry. "This once was a great city," he says. "This is a great city. It's the best. We just forgot." Well, I would say your city's leaders forgot too. And not only did they forget, it seems like they did everything they could to change it into something terrible. So what do you guys think? Do you think that hiring private security companies up to and including the level of force of these, what could be called private military contractors, for public protection in public spaces, do you think this is a good idea, or do you think it's a terrible idea, or do you think it's just a symptom of the private sector trying to compensate for the public sector's failure to perform its duty?
Would definitely say it's a symptom of a greater issue. Whether or not it is a good idea or not, I guess only time will tell. If someone attempts a more than just a couple random pot shots, and they're able to stop someone from going on a rampage, then I guess it'll prove to be beneficial. Then on the flip side, if one of their guys overreacts and causes an issue, then it'll prove to be detrimental, and we won't know until said situation actually occurs.
Tim KC says, a Frenchman who would rather die in his boots. Roll call, how you doing, man? Welcome to the show. You must have snuck in while I was bloviating there.
Yeah, I was out at the garden. I was picking stuff, getting everything ready. I was like, I gotta get in the house and get on the chat.
Did you catch any of the article I was reading?
I caught a little bit. I guess this is in Portland. I'm taking it.
Yeah,
this is in Portland.
In Portland, they're hiring private contractors to secure areas of the city. In particular, their entertainment district, Old Town, this one bar has hired a private military contractor, Raven Crest Force Protection, to patrol the street that it's on, basically the one block that it's on.
And what does the lawmakers think about that? Do the lawmakers know what this bar is doing?
Well, the Popo don't like it, and various city officials don't like it, but
yeah. Well, what are they doing about it? That's the thing you gotta look at. What is the local municipalities doing about it? Are they
cutting $15 million from the police budget and dropping down 120 officers?
Well, what do you expect people to do?
Oh, and eliminating the police detail that was patrolling that area. That's what they're doing about it.
Well, see, I mean, you got to figure if you live in these areas, you're going to have to do something. Whether these law people or these politicians like it or not, you're going to they hatched this themselves. They've created this baby that has grown up to be a dirty monster, a monster that rapes and pillages people of their freedom and their right to walk about without being harassed.
Hey, bro.
They created. Am I breaking up?
No. You weren't here when I told the other guys that I'm trying to keep things radio friendly tonight. Just before you start getting on a roll and building up to it, trying to keep it radio friendly tonight.
Well, yeah, no doubt.
So
but
please
I mean,
continue.
they created this problem. This problem was manifested when the lawmakers quit implementing law. So what do you expect people to do? I mean, how many people did we see that are movie stars that have private security when they go to clubs that carry a firearm? What do you expect average people to do when they try to make some kind of prosperous venture in this country and it's always getting toned down by violence and people that are enacting this violence that are doing it freely and they do it every night? What do you expect people to do? Have we come so far to just give up and get rid of these systems that have been put in place, that have been in place for decades upon decades? What do you expect people to do? Or do you expect people how many times have we heard lawmakers say, oh, sometimes you're going to have to fend for yourself? Well, these people are fending for themselves and now they don't like it. Well, do something about it. You're put in these positions for a reason and do it. I think it's going to be, I wonder what their insurance is going to be for this. If one of these guys kind of get out of line and they do something violently and they have to respond with an act of aggression, what is that going to entail in this storyline of having private security people? Because I'm going to tell you, I've worked with them. They're nice people to a certain extent. And I'm going to tell you, these little kids get out of line, it could end bad. It's not probably going to end bad for people that are properly trained in the tactics of using forceful methods, because let's face it, Antifa doesn't do that. They're scared
Antifa's
children.
Just an idea. Come on.
Yeah, and again, And again, it goes back to we'll do the Pasaki circle back. It goes to the point that they manifested this. The administration that we're under right now is manifesting this and letting it go on. So in one sense, I say you got to do what you got to do. And the other sense is hopefully these bars and these shops and the people in this area understand the liability they're about to uphold and take in having these people on their property. It is what it is, man.
Squib, do you have an opinion on this?
So I think that Calaveras and Roll Call both have good points. Some things that they said I was thinking about, but there's something else too. These businesses, this downtown area generates a lot of revenue for Portland, generates a lot of tax revenue for the city, let alone the state and federal taxes. Also, these businesses pay for permits, licenses, they pay fees, they have inspections, they have all kinds of additional costs that they pay to the city, the county, the state, federal government to be a business, to be a licensed, legitimate business. If I was a business owner down there and I had to make the decision in order to bring in my customers and make my customers safe because the government's failing to do its job, I would be maybe looking into seeing if there's some way that I don't have to pay for my business license this year, or I don't have to pay as much in property taxes, or what can I get? What action can I take legally? Is there anything I can do because I'm paying for services that aren't being rendered? You see, if the government wants to provide law enforcement, and that is supposed to provide a form of security and public safety, and this is an area that generates a lot of revenue, a lot of business for that municipality, common sense tells me that they would put a priority on this, especially if they don't want these business owners going to the lengths of hiring private security, armed security. If they don't, and they can say we're being defunded, we're 120 people short, then why don't they get with the business owners and say, we got 120 off-duty officers. Can we work out a deal? I still don't think they should have to pay it though, because like I said, they're already paying fees and permits and licenses and taxes. They're already paying for this and the services aren't being rendered. So, do they have a legal case? Maybe they should get together and do a class action lawsuit against the city, or make the city reimburse them for this private security or something. But for me, this is kind of a capitalism kind of issue for right now. Let's just see what happens with it. And, it'd be interesting to see if maybe this happens in Chicago as well, right? Where they're not able to protect, and so many businesses have already left the city and stuff. They're not able to protect these businesses and whatnot.
I think that's an interesting point. It would be, it'd be something to see this kind of thing start to spread. I think it is absolutely a case of the private sector coming in to fill the vacuum left when the public sector has abrogated its responsibility to perform certain services like ensuring public safety. Portland, last year, for those who may have forgotten or who weren't paying attention and don't know, pretty much surrendered the city to Antifa and Black Lives Matter and all of the domestic terrorists who were raising hell throughout the city and creating months of nightly riots and damage and violence. Not mostly peaceful protesters. They were rioters. All summer last year, they were Antifa and BLM and other groups that are aligned with them. It seems like I couldn't go a single week last year without talking about this. This is the natural consequences. Even after all of that stuff, Portland, the city of Portland's response was to cut their police department. It would seem that they would maybe want to add more officers to maintain some order. But no, they took the opposite approach because police are bad, okay? We shouldn't have police, and they're bad. So local businesses have decided, if they're not going to provide for my safety, they finally realized something. And this is why I included this, because this story on the surface would seem to not have anything to do with firearms, with the Second Amendment, but you're wrong, because this story is an example of the public sector not providing for your protection because they don't have to. That has been stated many times. It's been upheld in court on many occasions that the public sector, i.e. the police, don't have to protect you. They don't have to protect your business. They don't have to do anything but come by, take notes, and try to figure out who did the crime. It's up to you to protect yourself, folks, which these business owners are doing. They're protecting themselves by hiring private security companies, by hiring mercenaries to protect their business, to patrol their streets, and protect lives. I don't see anything wrong with it. I know there are people who are like, oh, this is dystopian, and oh, it's terrible. The private companies have no place doing this. The public, the police should be doing this. The city government should be doing this. And you're right. They should be. But they're not. And if they're not going to do it, it's up to us to do it for ourselves. Period. So I think that anybody in Portland's administration and any public official in Portland and anywhere else who sees this story and says that the club owners and the business people have no right to do this, that private security shouldn't be patrolling public streets, well, you're right in one sense, but you're wrong in another, because if the public sector won't do it, the private sector should. Let's see what they say out in the chat about some stuff. Rich White says, when you defund the police and blame them for every little thing a bunch of spoiled punks do, of course there isn't going to be enough police to do their job. They're getting what they wanted, and they can stew in it. Let's see.
That's where I believe it was Portland last year, where during the I believe that's where the Chaz thing was. There was
that was Seattle. Wasn't that in Seattle, Chaz Chop, or was it Portland?
Maybe that was Seattle.
I can't remember. No, it might have been Portland.
Point being, that's where during that whole situation there was, when they had all the police locked out, there was one of the they got video of a guy who ended up being, if I remember correctly, a multi-time felon, so he wasn't supposed to have firearms anyhow, handing firearms out of the trunk of his car to anybody and everybody walking by.
Yep.
So if the cops aren't going to protect you and you're going to have that kind of situation going on, then maybe this private security is the only thing available to, besides everyone, staying strapped, to try to keep some kind of order. Because, most of those thugs, whatever category they wanted to call themselves under, or the non-binary, or whatever the heck they wanted to be, most of they, were willing to go after the weak. They were not willing to do anything if there was someone, potentially willing to stand up against them.
Yep.
Yeah, these private military contractors are a deterrent, but if they act and something goes bad, like Calabar said, only time will tell if the public is going to support this. And like Roll Call said, I hope they got good insurance. But I got to wonder, though, if privatizing law enforcement could be the thing of the future, I wonder if Omni Consumer Products is hiring in my area.
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing. I wonder how much that company's paying. I'll go out to Portland.
How close are you to Detroit there, Squib?
I could be there in about 45 minutes.
Oh, that's commuting distance. Let's see. New York Outcast says, I don't see anything wrong with PSCs working for people. It's nothing new.
Well, let me throw this out there. What about the Congress lady that said she'd spend $70,000 on security and another $10 out of her pocket just to keep it? What's the difference between one person and the difference between a whole community? Is that one person more important than that whole entire community in Portland for the people that are on the fence about this?
She'll tell you.
She did say she is. And I think the difference, Roll Call, is that she's using our tax dollars to pay for her security. These businesses are either going in together or independently paying for it.
And
they must be making a heck of a lot of money. That's why I was going to the whole, what are they paying taxes and permits and fees and licenses for if the police can't? And I'm not saying the police should say, well, we're not going to patrol the neighborhoods because we got to go where the money is. But I mean, work with me here.
No, and that's it. That's the difference between her and them. She's using our money. These business owners are using their money. That's the difference.
And I want to caution people before they start pointing the finger at the cops. They really don't have a say so. They're order followers, and they're going to have to follow the orders for that paycheck.
The police administration may have a little bit of influence on it, but really it's the politicians that the people of Portland have elected who have mismanaged their city to the point where private businesses have to hire private security to maintain order on public streets.
Yeah. So, I mean, I am I on the fence about this? I think there's risk involved, but nobody should be put through the grinder to make a living as they're continuously threatened by these people that have really gone unchecked. I mean, they get checked every once in a while, but we've all seen the footage where they run out there and they throw a couple of smoke bombs and hit them with some pepper balls, and then they cry. But I think are we in treacherous waters? Should I say that? Are we in treacherous waters, and are more businesses around the country that have engulfed themselves in these problems of none but the lawmakers in charge? Are they going to continue to do this? Is this going to be the new trend for businesses? Is this, we all remember Kyle Rittenhouse, remember? Do you guys forget about Kenosha out there in the chat and that watch this on replay? That was the same premise that they were trying to accomplish there. So what would be the difference? Why? Because some people have a little bit more training than others, or are people really fed up and they just want to move on with their lives? So this is that's another instance that I see. How much, if everybody blames Kyle for being in that spot, are people going to blame these contractors that get into conflict? Weigh that on your scale and let me know what you feel about it.
Ripley says, which, by the way, I don't believe I recognize the name, so welcome to the show. Glad you stopped by. Glad you put forth your opinion out there. Ripley says, rifles are a bad idea in a club packed full of people. Over-penetration will kill a lot of people, if God forbid, something happens and they have to use their rifles. I kind of agree with that. Hey, Jason.
Believe it or not.
Ripley also says, also note how fat the founder is and how they call themselves Reaper and Ghost. Hearts are in the right place, but these guys are not any more legit than the untrained citizens. He goes on to say, they're about as trained as ANA. I'm guessing that's Afghan National Army. Having the most minimum amount of training does not make you trained. If you would feel comfy with these guys having your back, you're insane. Then says, not the point I'm making. The point is that these guys are LARPers. Fat, barely trained, edgy cool guy names, etc. The fact that they have ARs in that environment shows that they don't know what they're doing. Interesting. Artak says you're missing the point. Just because some are fat don't mean they can't handle themselves. Yeah, fat guys rise up. Anyhow, I see your point, Ripley. But I applaud the fact that somebody's willing to stand up and offer their services to do something. Yeah, I could do without the top tier operator, cool guy personas that they seem to have adopted. Just Bob and Jeff would be fine. Don't need to be Reaper and Ghost. We only got one Ghost out here, and he's out in the chat. So, how you doing, buddy?
How would that go over in court? So Reaper has to take out one of the bad guys who's shooting into the crowd, and then they go, oh, well, this is just like the dust cover with the smile and wait for flash or whatever. I don't know.
No, you're right.
Then we go right back to roll calls insurance.
You're right. Cool, be trying to have cool code names and all that crap. Yeah, that's kind of LARPy. I see what Ripley's saying. If they wanted to go without all that stuff and,
Another thing, too, is these business owners, these business owners may have no military security or law enforcement experience at all, and they have no idea, right? They might want to see if these guys have a business license, or if they are insured, they're licensed and bonded with the city, whatever it is, right? Or might have consult their lawyers about what they can legally do or not do, or do these guys have their own lawyers? Or they might be looking at things like that. But if the guy comes in 511 pants and flashes a badge or a concealed carry permit and pulls the whole Navy SEAL thing and all that, they might be impressed, and it might be a technique to draw business from people who don't know the real tactical stuff. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Reality Troll says troops are not police and police should not be troops. Ripley said in another comment that where is it? Can't take former troops, put them into security, and expect them to do well. They're totally different jobs. I agree. I agree wholeheartedly. I've spent for those who don't know, I spent 20 years in corrections, and that's a different job from law enforcement. A correction officer wouldn't do well on the street because they're corrections, and it's a totally different ball game than being a street officer. Same thing applies. A street officer coming into corrections doesn't do well for the first little bit until they get their corrections feet under them, because it's a completely different job. So I understand exactly what you're saying. Squib, you had something to add?
So you can draw on your experience in that different field that has some similarities, or where you can use some of the same skills, some of the same ability to make judgment calls like escalate, de-escalate, this, that, and the other, right? You can use that as a base, and then you can train out from there. Like, it would be easier for somebody who has no military training at all, or I should say, it'd be so easier for somebody with military experience to be given a security or law enforcement job with some training than it would be for somebody with no experience in any of that at all, and vice versa. The thing is, you've got to be very clear on the rules of engagement. If you gave me an area to patrol and I knew what kind of weapons I could use, under what circumstances I could use them, what are my limits on this, what are my limits on that, everything from what they're willing to back me up if I make a judgment call on this, to what are the state laws or whatever. The rules of engagement have to be clear. It's just like when you go into a different area where there's fighting. You've got different terrain. You've got, the enemy is different. They have a different objective. They have different weapons. They have, fighting is fighting, but you have to have something specific to the theater of operations you're in. So I could see somebody with military experience, if they got good training and the rules of engagement were clear, that would be something I would push big time with my people, is making sure that, we're not in Bosnia anymore. You can use some of that stuff, but it's just not the same on American soil. Or, those things you couldn't do overseas, now you're expected to do those over here, or whatever it is. I think with enough training, you could do it.
I would say this. Training helps, but it's not the answer to this. The only answer to this problem is experience, because I can tell you that given a choice between having a brand new guy coming into corrections and a military guy coming into corrections, a lot of times I'd take the brand new guy, because they don't have they don't have stuff that they have to unlearn, and they don't have the I've been there, done that attitude about it. On the other hand, the guys that are switched on, they do have certain basic things that you need to have in the corrections field. The discipline, have to have the concept of unit cohesion and brotherhood with the people that you're working with. Things like that you just develop with experience and you can't really teach. Military guys do have that. So I guess really it kind of comes down to the individual's attitude about it. So I guess I just proved myself wrong. That's cool though. I'm not infallible by a long shot.
Right, and Ghost Tactical made a comment that's where he was agreeing with Squib that rules of engagement must be clearly defined, and that's where I kind of said I also commented back to him that and if you follow the rules of engagement, your superiors need to back you up as well, because that's where if they're the owner of the security team, their license says they can do A, B, and C. This is the rules of engagement, and they actually, follow that. They need to then not have, if some activist, decides to go after them for it, they need to, have a system that allows them to be somewhat shielded. So that way you did it kind of like, cops deal with it all the time. They followed their rules of engagement, for better or worse, and then, someone decides they want to try to prosecute him just to make a political point.
Last thing I want to say on this, before we move on to the next topic, although I do want to address this. Ripley says, I get them being the only ones to step up, but at what point do they become more of a hindrance and danger rather than helpful? Well, if you're talking about this specific company, I can't tell you because I've not seen them other than in this article. I don't know if these guys specifically were the right choice for this. But I think the concept of a private contractor performing this duty is absolutely doable. I think it's absolutely a good thing if, as I said, if the public sector has abrogated its responsibility and they're not doing it. I want to move on to the next topic, and boy, oh boy, it's a good one for me. As I may have mentioned, I am in Northeast Ohio, OHIO to those of you out there. Let me see, where are we at? This next piece is good news, good news. For those of us in the Buckeye State, this is from BuckeyeFirearms.org. Senator Terry Johnson introduces constitutional carry bill SB 215. On August 5th, 2021, Senator Terry Johnson introduced Senate Bill 215 to bring constitutional carry to Ohio. SB 215 will not eliminate Ohio's licensing system, but will make the license optional for those who prefer to have a license or who wish to carry in other states that recognize Ohio's license. Ohioans have proven themselves to be overwhelmingly law-abiding over the past 17 years since concealed carry became law, said Dean Reich, BFA Executive Director. And Ohio is ready to join the 21 other states that now permit concealed carry without a license. Currently, 34 states allow open carry without a license, and 21 states allow concealed carry without a license. In all, 75% of the country makes it legal to carry openly, concealed, or both without a license. None of these states have seen an increase in crime or accidents, despite the fear-mongering of gun control advocates. SB 215 does not change the rules for use of lethal force, and it does not change the locations where Ohioans may legally carry a firearm. It simply gives law-abiding citizens the option to carry a handgun with or without a license. In addition, the bill eliminates the duty to promptly notify a law enforcement officer when carrying a firearm. This is another fix to Ohio gun law that is overdue because of the confusion over what promptly means. Co-sponsors include Senator Lewis Blessing, Senator Frank Hoagland, who is my senator, Senator Stephen Huffman, Senator George Lang, Senator Rob McCauley, Senator Mark Romanchuk, Senator Michael Ruley, and Senator Tim Schaefer. Buckeye Firearms Association fully supports both constitutional carry and removing the duty to inform, and we urge the legislature to move this bill. And I got to tell you, I darn sure, and it's hard not to cuss. I have to really get that under control, right? I darn sure support both of those things. And I'm going to let Mr. Hoagland, Senator Hoagland, know. Matter of fact, I'm going to call him right now and leave a message on his answering machine telling him so. And if your state senator is one of those guys or gals, I think it's all guys, if your state senator's name is on that list, And you need to call them and tell them that you approve this as well, assuming you do. And if their name's not on that list of co-sponsors, you need to call them and tell them to get on that list of co-sponsors, or at the very least, vote for this when it comes up for a vote. So let's call Senator Hoagland and express our thoughts on this. I know I'm just going to get the answering machine.
Hi, you've reached the office of State Senator Frank Hoagland, the 30th Senate District. We are unable to take your call at the moment, but please leave your name, number, and a detailed message, and we'll get back to you as soon as possible. Thank you, and have a nice day.
Record your message at the tone. When you are finished, hang up or press pound for more options.
Hi, I'd like to leave a message for the senator. My name is Michael Kreitzer. I'm one of his constituents. I'm also the host of The Right of the People, where we use the first to defend the second. And matter of fact, I'm broadcasting right now. Wanted to tell the senator that I absolutely appreciate the fact that he is one of the co-sponsors of Senate Bill 215 to allow constitutional carry in the state and to remove the duty to promptly inform law enforcement. I think it is great to have someone who so closely represents my views on this issue, and I'd like to encourage him to continue doing so and to fight hard and fight diligently to get this legislation passed. Thank you very much, and I'll be probably contacting you again at some point over this, so thank you. And it's that easy to do, folks. That's it. Take 15 seconds, 20 seconds, a minute, whatever, however long that was. I'm sure it was a little bit longer than that, a couple minutes anyhow, to contact your elected representatives and let them know what you think. There's a reason I end every single show with that, and it's this. Because they respond to knowing what their constituents, what their voters, what their potential supporters and potential donors have to say about it. You can make a difference. So I'll definitely be staying on top of developments with the constitutional carry movement here in Ohio, and I'll let you guys know as I know. I think it's great. Hopefully it won't die in the vine and whatnot. I need to see if I can get an interview with Senator Hoagland and pick his brain as to what he thinks the chances of this actually passing might be. So, yeah. And maybe see what I can do to help it. Because, you know, put your money where your mouth is, right? Next up.
If Ohio gets constitutional carry before Indiana, very upset.
You will? Well, you know what you need to do, right? You know what you need to do, right?
I already did that, and they told us no.
See, I don't care which one of you gets it first. I just know that we won't get it here until one of you gets it. There's not an anti-Second Amendment movement in my state, but I think some of the changes that we've had have come from within, but a few have been influenced from our neighboring states in
where are you
this
at,
region.
For those who don't know, what state you in?
I'm in Michigan, you know, the state where apparently we're just so oppressed here. And you know, somebody go, well, you don't have constitutional carry, so it must be. No, it's really not that bad. But it's not that there's an anti-constitutional carry movement here, but if one of you two get it, Indiana or Ohio gets it, they'll be like, oh, we can't let the neighbors have that, and we don't have that. It's one of those things. So I guess it would be keeping up with the Joneses in this case, which in this case I think that's a good thing for our state. But they won't. They've talked about it before, but it's never really gained any traction. If the neighbors got it, we got to have it. So, yeah, I hope you guys get it, both of you.
Well, there's a chance that you'll get it. There's a chance that Roe will get it. I don't think there's ever a chance that Pickle will get it. What do you think, Pickle?
I think we're more likely to get, have someone important get struck by lightning than us to get constitutional carry.
I'm sorry, I shouldn't giggle about that, but yeah, you're right. You are more likely to physically separate along a fault line and float out to sea in California than you are to get constitutional carry. As a matter of fact, you're more likely to have your state constitution amended to have gun ownership completely abolished in California than you are to get constitutional carry.
Yeah, but if California ever split in two, it's still big enough of a state. There would be two big states there. I think the eastern part of California would probably allow that if they broke away and became their own entity.
As long as we ditched, left, key pieces behind.
Yeah, I mean, you guys need to wall off Los Angeles and San Francisco and just, wall those cities off and just make sure that no one can escape them, and then maybe you guys might have some freedom.
Yeah, basically wall off, 3/4 of the basically everything from probably Fort Bragg south along the coast. So that'd be 3/4 or more of our coastline. As long as we did that, and guarded it better than what we do our southern border, we'll be okay.
Fort Irwin. Fort Bragg's in North Carolina. You're talking about Fort Irwin.
No, that's where we have a town called Fort Bragg. There's no.
I thought you were talking about the military installation.
No, that's where. There's no. There used to be a fort there, back during the colonization of California. It's about 3 hours north of San Francisco.
Interesting. I did not know that. Thank you.
Well, here in Ohio, freedom is on the march with the constitutional carry push happening. The ATF, however, has other things in mind as far as freedom goes, because they're exercising their freedom, which they have seized, to regulate things out of existence. This is from The Truth About Guns. Biden pulls a trump card. Rare breed FRT-15 trigger now classified as a machine gun. The agency famous for once declaring a shoestring a machine gun has now targeted Florida-based company Rare Breed Triggers. An ATF letter to Rare Breed is floating around social media stating that the FRT-15 trigger has been classified as a machine gun under the National Firearms Act, and that Rare Breed needs to cease and desist sales of the FRT-15 and contact the ATF within 5 days to develop a plan to address those machine guns already distributed. Then it has a picture of a copy of the letter to them. ATF concluded the Rare Breed triggers to be a combination of parts designed and intended to convert a semi-automatic weapon into a machine gun. The ATF's examination found that the Rare Breed trigger allows a firearm to shoot automatically more than one shot without manual reloading with a single continuous pull of the trigger. The FRT in FRT-15 stands for Forced Reset Trigger, and while I've handled one, I understand that they still require one pull of the trigger to function. The user pulls the trigger, the weapon fires, and the FRT-15 forces a reset of the trigger. If the user keeps continuous force on the trigger, it will fire again. Here's Rare Breed's explanation of how the FRT-15 works. So it goes to a Vimeo video. I don't know. It's a 10-minute video. I don't know if we're going to watch all of it, but we'll look at some of it anyway. Now, it does seem like you can get a pretty high rate of fire with this thing, so yeah. Let's skip forward a little bit till it gets to how where it explains how
the National Firearms Act 26 U.S.C. has a specific cycle of round fires.
Right.
As the round passes the gas port, most of the gas is vented through the gas.
Right here he's talking about how a mil-spec AR-15 trigger works, which I'm sure most of you are familiar with. Yes, now we're going to go into the animation of how the FRT-15 trigger works.
Round is then forced into the chamber. As the bolt is fully closed, it locks into place and the cycle is ready to be repeated. And now for the FRT. With the bolt locked, round in the chamber, and safety off, the cycle of operation begins as the shooter squeezes the trigger. The round fires. As the round passes the gas port, most of that gas is vented through the gas tube and begins the process of sending the bolt to the rear. When that process starts, the bolt unlocks. The empty brass is then extracted from the chamber and ejected from the firearm. As the bolt moves to the rear, it cocks the hammer, which is the point in the cycle of operation where our FRT is different from a standard mil-spec trigger. In our patented design, as the bolt cocks the hammer forces a reset on the trigger, which pushes the shooter's finger forward. Simultaneously, as the trigger is forced into a reset, the locking bar pivots into position, mechanically locking the trigger, preventing it from functioning again until the cycle of operation is complete. As the spring behind the buffer pushes the bolt forward, a new round is stripped from the magazine. That new round is then forced into the chamber. As the bolt closes and locks into place, that locking bar disengages, which allows for the cycle to be repeated.
So for those who, because I know my panel can't hear what's going on with this, if you guys weren't watching on another window or whatnot, the way this works is that when you squeeze the trigger, the hammer goes forward, strikes the firing pin, the weapon fires. Bolt goes back, cocks the hammer, but it also trips a locking bar that interacts with the trigger and prevents the trigger from going rearward as the trigger is forced to reset. So it automatically resets the trigger even if you are continuing to press back on the trigger's reset and it's locked so that it cannot move to the rear. Once the bolt goes into battery, it hits the locking bar is released, the trigger can be pulled again. If you are continuing rearward pressure on the trigger will then of course fire as soon as the locking bar gets out of the way. Okay, so that allows for one round for each pull of the trigger, but it allows you to pull the trigger insanely fast without yourself releasing the trigger. And I think this might be where the ATF is having a quibble with it. Number one, that fire rate is like faster than Michelak even. And number two, if that you don't have to release your own force on the trigger in order to get this fire rate. All right, so going on with the article, this is not an automatic function by any means, and the weapon fires one shot per trigger pull. The ATF must have rolled an above 15 on their D20 and decided it's time to go rogue once again. The FRT-15 does not seem to meet the definition of a machine gun, but then again, neither did bump stocks. According to court documents, Rare Breed filed for declaratory and injunctive relief against all defendants on the 2nd of August, as well as a temporary restraining order, which appeared to be denied on 8/05. According to court documents, the team at Rare Breed has a hearing this morning in a Florida court regarding the ATF's action. I've reached out for comments from Rare Breed Triggers and have not heard back at the time of publishing. I imagine they're gearing up for the legal battle, and I wish them nothing but luck. Watch this space for updates. So, I think that's pretty much where the ATF's complaint with this is that if you continue holding the trigger back, it will continue to fire as soon as the bolt goes back into battery. Even though the trigger itself is release, reset, release, reset, release, reset, release, reset. If you keep pressure on that trigger, it's going to keep firing as long as you hold pressure. I think that technically speaking, this is not a machine gun. But I also think that this is really pushing the envelope, and the ATF was bound to react in this fashion. Do I think they should? No, because when it comes to the law, technically is what matters. But I would have expected this to happen. What do you guys think? Is Is it a case of, dude, you poke the hornet's nest, don't get surprised when you're stung? Or is it a case of, hey, dudes, this meets the letter of the law, shut up and leave it alone?
From what their description, in their little animation, I would definitely say it. You know what? It meets the letter of the law, but I could also say that it really toes that line and does not surprise me that the ATF has gone after it. I think the best, it's not going to happen, but I would think the best solution of, to fix this particular lawsuit is for the, NFA to be completely, eliminated, but that, along with the ATF, but that's a whole different topic.
Rose, Squib? Okay, dude,
if the NFA didn't exist, if the user amendment didn't exist, nobody would be making binary triggers. Nobody would be making bump stocks. Nobody would be making auto key cards. Nobody would be making these things. The thing is, they're trying to find a legal way to, I don't want to say skirt the NFA. Sometimes they're trying to skirt around the NFA, and sometimes they're trying to follow the NFA. The way you described it to me, sounds like it's a full auto to me. It doesn't sound like it's even close to something that you could say that, you're still pulling the trigger each time. If you can hold the trigger down and it resets itself, it's full auto. So I don't think we should have an NFA.
Squib.
I don't think we should have
a question. Because this is a serious question, because I have absolutely zero, zip, zilch, nada, nothing, no experience firing a fully automatic weapon, so I don't know. This is why I'm asking you this. When you fire a fully automatic weapon, even if you're holding rearward pressure on the trigger, does the trigger reset and then pull again when the bolt is closed, or does it remain back the entire time? I honestly have no practical experience with this. I don't know.
The reset is in a sear. All this is a sear by a different name. Like so many of these other devices, it's a sear that's outside instead of inside. It's a sear that functions differently, or it does the same thing as a sear mechanically, as the way you're describing it. Without having done any research on this, just listening to you, I mean, they've been hitting my email for weeks. I'm going, who is this company? How did they get my email address? I don't know. I'm not really interested in their products because I didn't give them my email address. They must have got it from someplace I bought something from. But there are a lot of these products that, once again, they wouldn't exist if there was no NFA or no use amendment. And a lot of them do the same job, and you can get all scientific and technical and et cetera, but I just don't think that's going to hold up very well. It hasn't in the past. The real way to deal with this is to get rid of the use amendment and the NFA. But I also think that that's the least of our worries, or the least of our concerns, we're trying to handle things in a step progression to get the Second Amendment to mean what the Second Amendment means. No ifs, ands, or buts. Just I never have the popular opinion when it comes to these gimmicks and these toys, and I'm always going to be that person in the room. But
no,
mechanically, a machine gun resets itself, and a lot of these devices reset. They reset stuff for you. So if you're looking at it from that standpoint, somebody can read off the technical definition, fine. In court, read that off to the ATF and win the case. I don't know, but too many people like to poke the bear. I mean, you could be making ammo right now and probably be doing a lot better. You could be making primers right now. Just sell primers. Okay, don't sell triggers. Sell primers. I guarantee you won't be able to make them fast enough.
Okay, so I think, and understand, I'm not a lawyer, so take my opinion with a grain of salt. We all know it. A grain of salt. A grain of salt. We all know what opinions are worth, right? I think it's both. I think it's a case of you poke the bear, you're going to get mauled. But I also think it's a case of, hey, this meets the letter of the law. And when you're speaking about the law, the letter of the law is all that matters. It is 1 round fired per function of the trigger. It just so happens that at this point, because it forces a reset of the trigger along with the sear, that it allows that high rate of fire. Because I think you're right. It's using your mechanical, your pressure from your muscles, your muscle pressure, to act in place of an auto sear and release once that locking bar is released, to squeeze the trigger again instead of letting an auto sear do it. But because it's a reset of the trigger, that pressing of the trigger again is a separate function of the trigger. So technically, I don't think it's a machine gun. That being said, I know that the fact that it's you don't manually release the trigger and then manually pull it again, getting that rate of fire is what the ATF objects to, because they feel that it is too close to being a machine gun, just like it was with the bump stocks. They're using the same reasoning. Now, one question I have to wonder is, are they going to try this same tack with binary triggers? And I honestly don't think they can, because with a binary trigger, it is absolutely 2 separate actions to fire those 2 rounds. One is a press of the trigger, one is a release of the trigger. You can press that trigger and hold it back as long as you want, and it's not going to fire until you do the second function and release the trigger. And as a matter of fact, while you're holding it after the initial press, you can rotate the selector switch and turn it to safe and release the trigger, and it's not going to fire. So I think that it's going to be interesting to see how this pans out legally, and I'm certainly going to keep an eye on it. I don't have a dog in this fight. I don't have an FRT-15 trigger. This is honestly the first I've ever heard of this thing. Had I known about it, I probably would have bought one, because they were reasonably priced, like around $265, and that's probably as close as I'll ever get to a giggle switch. So yeah, I'd have bought one. Let's see. Gun Websites says, you change bad law by challenging it, not hoping it'll go away or people will magically just decide to agree to remove it. You do stuff, it gets challenged, and you gather support to change bad law. It is a tactic. Absolutely right. I agree 100% on that. But I'll be keeping an eye on this, because I think it's an interesting case, especially since I don't have any money involved in it. Then it's just academic interest at this point. But I think that the greater solution to all of this is to get rid of the NFA. I think it's absolutely bogus and should have never stood to begin with. But what was it, Miller, who didn't bother showing up to court, and the NFA could have all been thrown out right then. So let's see, what is the next topic? Last week we talked about how Mexico is suing a whole bunch of gun makers in the U.S. for like $10 billion, with the help of the wonderful people at, it's either Gifford or Moms Demand Attention or both or something. But anyhow, there's one there's one gun maker that they're not suing, and that's Sig Sauer. Well, that, if I can ever get to the doggone story here, is because they have a contract with Sig Sauer to provide them with some machine guns. This is from Mom at Arms. Sig Sauer canceled the $5.5 million order from Mexico. It's a drop in the bucket in overall revenue. As we all know, Mexico, yes, the Mexican government, is suing the big names in gun manufacturing: Beretta, Ruger, Barrett, Smith & Wesson, Colt, and Glock, with the help of the Brady campaign, which, if you didn't know, is a gun control group. So I was wrong on both counts. It's Brady, not Giffords or Mom's Demand. It's Brady. They're all pretty much the same. They're all arms of Bloomberg anyhow. They blame those companies for their own domestic problems revolving around cartels and misuse of guns. Absent from that list among the big names is Sig Sauer, which it turns out is in the middle of a deal with the Mexican government to sell them $5.5 million worth of machine guns. This is they quote a piece from Reuters. The small arms maker Sig Sauer Inc. this is from August 3rd, has sought U.S. approval to sell millions of dollars worth of automatic assault rifles to the armed services of Mexico in a deal that will help to modernize the country's military, people familiar with the situation said. The U.S. Congress was notified last week that the Mexican Navy and Naval Infantry are in line to purchase as much as $5.5 million worth of automatic rifles made by Sig Sauer. The deal could be controversial because in the past, weapons sold to Mexican authorities have found their way into the hands of criminals. Mexico's drug war violence has largely been carried out with weapons from the United States imported both legally and illegally. Yes, we know that, and this goes back to the article. It says, yes, we know gun manufacturers are competitors. Business is business most of the time. However, Mexico leaving them out signals that they have obvious interests to not anger Sig Sauer. We hope that Sig Sauer sees how this looks to not only their competitors, but also to the millions of people in the civilian sector who purchase their products for self-defense and personal use. Sig Sauer can afford to tell Mexico that the deal's off and to stand with the firearms community. Not like they don't have many other government contracts around the world. $5.5 million is a drop in the bucket compared to their annual revenue of $325 million. So, I would say that the person on this blog post is absolutely, positively, 100% correct. Sig Sauer needs to tell the government of Mexico to go pound some of that sand that they have down there where it'll do some good. Because they should stand in solidarity with the other gun makers. Now, I don't know if they will. I intend to contact Sig and express my opinion, just like I do with my elected representatives. I think it would be a great thing if the gun community, gun culture, gun owners, Second Amendment advocates, whatever you want to call us, however you want to call us. I'm not going to get into the semantics of whether we're a community or not or all of that garbage. You know what I mean. If we as a group would stand together and urge Sig to tell Mexico to go adios. You guys think that's a good idea? Do you think that Sig might do it? Do you think they'll just go business to business and $5 million is $5 million? You're crazy. What do you think?
There's probably already somebody out in the live chat going, oh, whatever you do, don't boycott. That doesn't work. Or you need to put your energy towards doing something else. Or, oh, I'm not giving up my Sig for nothing. Or there's probably somebody out there misinterpreting what you're trying to say, I think.
I don't care about Mexico. And it's not like I don't care about Mexico. I don't care about the Mexican government. I think they have bigger problems at hand than gun manufacturers in the United States or around the world. I think they have their own problems. I own one Sig product. I'm satisfied with it for what it is. And it would kind of send a message, I guess, that, you know, put your nose to the grindstone and control your border down there and quit trying to control things in this country. I think we do a lot as a country, as a whole, for the Mexican government by propping them up. And quite frankly, I don't think Sig cares what we say one way or the other.
Probably
and if
not.
they did, they wouldn't put out products and make us be the guinea pigs for these products. So in essence, I wish the Mexican people all the encouragement and help that they can get from a corrupt government, even if the government says they're not corrupt. And I asked the manufacturers to toe their own line, because the last time I checked at rallies, I did not see a representative from Sig Sauer, from Springfield, from any other manufacturer. It was a bunch of people that were concerned with their Second Amendment rights. So until the manufacturers, as I've said before and I'll say again, toe the line with American gun owners and gun owners around the world, good luck fighting this one in court.
Well, I think Mexico's decision to sue us is just a tactic. Well, us by being the gun industry, because I think this isn't an attack really on the gun industry. It's an attack on gun ownership. It's a backdoor gun control. Again, it's part of the strategy of trying to make gun ownership or gun manufacturing too expensive of a proposition to engage in for a company.
Did you see who's backing this case?
Yeah.
Go do your due diligence of who's backing this and who threw it in that court system.
Yeah,
then you'll say, oh, the Brady campaign.
You know, this is kind of interesting. The Mexican government is suing American gun manufacturers. It's almost like they're outsourcing gun control.
Yes, there you go. They're outsourcing gun control. That's awesome. That is awesome. Well, hopefully the whatever judge this gets in front of will throw it out immediately. I think it would be absolutely ridiculously stupid if they allowed this to continue. Speaking of absolutely ridiculously stupid.
And now prepare yourself for another tale of stupidity in this episode of Moron of the Week.
First up in Moron of the Week is this piece from Bearing Arms by Tom Knighton from August 12th. Doctor's advice on guns ignores reality. As a former Navy corpsman, I was trained to listen to doctors. Then I specialized as a pharmacy tech and was then trained to be ready to tell doctors how wrong they are. That was long before I wrote about Second Amendment stuff, obviously. However, because of that, I can't just blindly accept what a doctor says about guns. To be fair, most physicians actually tend to be fairly grounded on firearms. My wife's doctor actually kind of watches the channel. So they don't actually worry too much about it unless you give them a reason to worry. However, sometimes well-meaning doctors dispense advice on guns that seems problematic. It then goes on to quote a different article. In our imperfect world, it's impossible to protect every person from every lurking danger, so we focus on risk reduction. People get killed in car crashes, but we can reduce those risks by putting children in car seats, wearing seat belts, following traffic signals, avoiding speeding, and not driving while impaired. People die of heart disease and cancer, but we can reduce those risks by eating healthy, exercising, and not smoking. People die of COVID-19, but we can reduce those risks by getting vaccinated, wearing masks, and avoiding crowds. When it comes to gun violence, again, I have to editorially interject and say that I reject the proposition that there is such a thing as gun violence. There is only violence, and the tool is irrelevant. But when it comes to gun violence, we can reduce those risks too, says a recent Voices of Child Health in Chicago survey administered by Ann and Robert H. Lurie Children's Hospital of Chicago. Having a gun in the house is dangerous, says Dr. Karen Sheehan, Associate Chair for Advocacy in Pediatrics at Lurie Children's Hospital and Medical Director of the Patrick M. Magoon Institute for Healthy Communities. The survey found 22% of homes in Chicago have guns, with higher gun ownership rates in more affluent communities, and that 46% of those guns are stored loaded, which increases risks. The The reality is that having firearms in the home increases the risk of unintentional shootings, suicide, and homicide, concludes an accompanying report by the American Academy of Pediatrics based in Itasca. Having guns increases the likelihood of an accidental shooting death by 400%. Well, yeah. I mean, having a gun near you at all times in a home means you're going to have a significantly higher risk of there being an accident than if you're just walking down the street. If guns are that dangerous, I'd expect it to be an increase of 10,000%. However, a 400% increase in the chance of being shot and killed by accident lacks context. It's an example of lying with statistics. The stat itself is true, but the implication isn't. If your odds of being killed by an accidental shooting go from 1 in 200 million to 1 in 50 million, is that really a risk? You still have a much better chance of winning the lottery than being accidentally shot and killed. I'm not saying the odds are that astronomical. I'm only pointing out that without context, we don't really have much to base that on. But that's just a minor annoyance. What bothers me is the advice offered later. It goes on to quote the piece that it's talking about, saying, people who have guns in their homes can reduce those risks by storing the weapons unloaded and locked inside a gun safe, locking away the ammunition separately, asking if the homes that your children visit have unlocked guns, teaching children who see a gun to immediately leave the area without touching the weapon and to tell an adult, in other words, NRA's Eddie Eagle, working with agencies that address violence prevention, and supporting legislation proven to decrease gun violence, the study concludes. Now, some of this isn't a huge deal, especially about educating your child on what to do if they see a gun. I'm annoyed that medical advice calls for pushing for legislation, especially when much of what people think as proven legislation really isn't. What really bothered me, though, was the suggestion that we should store our weapons and ammunition separately locked away at all times. Now, I do believe in using gun safes and think that if a weapon isn't in your control, then it should be locked away. However, let's think about that advice for a moment. You listen to this and do as instructed. Then one evening you hear a crash at your back door. Someone has broken the glass and is coming in your home. You tell your spouse to dial 911 and you run to get your gun. With your hands shaking, you finally manage to unlock the safe and get your gun. Now you have to find your ammunition and load the weapon. Now fully armed, you proceed to go and protect your family. How long will that take? A few minutes? Let me ask you this. How many horrors could be visited on your wife and kids in a few minutes? A lot. But this is to reduce accidents, and accidents are far more common than burglars breaking in, right? Not necessarily. In 2018, USA Today published a story stating that there were 73 accidental shooting deaths among children. In it, they state that there were a similar number of such deaths over the 5 previous years. At least some of those are in the homes of felons who shouldn't legally have guns anyway. However, there are reportedly around 100 burglaries that result in a homicide each year. That doesn't touch on things like attempted homicide, severe beatings, or rapes. Now, don't get me wrong. Each of those 73 children's deaths is an absolute tragedy. So much unlived life, it's impossible not to feel bad about it. However, that's still only a fraction of the fatalities that result in burglaries. Yet despite that, you want me to keep my guns and ammunition locked away separately where I can't get to it in a moment? Not going to happen. Especially when there are other steps one can take to mitigate risk when it comes to guns and young children. So, dumb doctors, you are my first contestant on Moron of the Week. Next up is this piece from Mom at Arms. Gun control activists now using neo-Nazi websites for arguments in favor of their positions. You can't make this up. Meet Shannon. She works for Giffords. And it goes to show the Shannon's, looks like her Twitter profile pic. Shannon, vaxxed and wears a mask. Says, Shannon really wants universal background checks. She even submitted an article to the Houston Chronicle shilling for them. And it goes to her, a tweet of her submitting about the article she submitted. And then there's a link to it in the Houston Chronicle. And someone challenged her on it. And, you know, as a reply to her tweet from somebody by Dr. Strangelove, says, I bet this guy disagrees with you. And it shows a picture from World War II with someone in a pit about to be executed by a Nazi soldier. And she said that this is a myth and links to an article from National Vanguard. So the National Vanguard, clicking the link on Twitter, a warning comes up saying that the link may be unsafe. And as it turns out, the National Vanguard is a Nazi website. And the article that it linked to is The Myth of Gun Control Under Hitler, which basically says that the gun control under Hitler was a myth, and that race and is differences between races are real, and we got a basically white supremacist pap. So this Shannon Flores, who works for, who does she work for? Oh, Giffords. So yeah, Shannon Flores, who is who works for Giffords and an organizer and experienced leader working with diverse populations and community outreach. The very first thing she does when confronted with history is links to a Nazi article that says no, that didn't happen. So Simple Shannon, you are contestant number 2 in Moron of the Week. But wait, there's more. Because this tweet by Tammy Paulson, let's see, Tammy Paulson says that states with more gun laws have less homicides per capita, and people are debunking that, and she gives a list of St. Louis, Baltimore, Birmingham, Detroit, Dayton, Baton Rouge, New Orleans, Kansas City, Memphis, Cleveland, and someone's going, those are all extremely violent places, and she says, yes, those are the highest homicide cities. Less than half have decent gun control. Then Logan says, I suggest getting a gun to protect yourself. Put it in your hands, not the government. Tammy says guns are less than worthless for self-defense. Then someone says, did this go as well as you had hoped? And Tammy says, much better. Glad to be educating the gun blind. Beach Bunny Girl says, if by educating you mean advocating for historically racist laws, sure. Then Tammy says, gun laws can't be racist since guns are worthless for self-defense. So, yeah, gun laws can't be racist because guns are worthless for self-defense. So, yeah, Pinhead Paulson is the last contestant for Moron of the Week. So I'm going to go out into the chat here and post my poll. You guys here in the panel, who do you like the most for this? Dumb Doctors, Silly Shannon, or Pinhead Paulson? Let me know. Ro, who do you like? Dumb Doctors, Silly Shannon, or Pinhead Paulson?
For reference, for Silly Shannon and the freaks of the neo-Nazi parties or whatever, wherever she got that information, where gun control was already implemented before Hitler took his stance being the supreme ruler of that land. He just took it a step further, so it is not a myth, and the Nazis are wrong. Please do your research. Do diligently, and don't listen to Shannon or those idiots. And I pick, of course, the third one.
Pinhead Paulson is your vote. Well, get on the poll and vote, because those are the only votes that count.
I'm sorry, I can't because I'm on my phone.
I'm sorry. Squibby,
and you're gonna take my ability to vote away?
You are disenfranchised.
Oh God, I need an ID.
Squibby, who do you like the most for this?
Racist Shannon.
Silly Shannon gets Squib's vote. Pickle, who do you like?
Pinhead Paulson.
Pinhead Paulson. So out there in the chat, use the poll. Let me know what you think. Right now we've got 6 votes, and Silly Shannon has 67%, Pinhead Paulson has 17%, and Dumb Doctors have 14%. So let's get some more votes in, folks. We got, 19 people watching? We only got 7 votes. Let's get some votes in. Click on the poll and answer that. And then just
Come
let me
on,
know what you think
people.
here in the chatteroo.
Come on, people. Do your service. You're getting free entertainment here. At least you can push a button. Ugh, good Lord.
Let's see. Who... G-Webs is like, Giffords is using Nazi news to back their position. Yep.
And it's not even correct. It's not even correct stuff. Oh, man.
James Culp says he thinks Joe Biden should be moron of the week every week. Rob, the New York Outcast, votes for the American public for letting this crap fly as normal. Mike Warhorse says the second gets my vote simply for the blindness of the argument she makes. Paulson is just a lesser story, though still stupid. New York Outcast says one of his phones shows the polls, this one doesn't. Mike Warhorse is like, am I the only person disappointed in humans generally right now? Oh, no, I am always disappointed in humans generally. Right now, we only have 7 votes, folks. Silly Shannon's got 57%. Silly Shannon has 62% of 8 votes. Dumb Doctors has 12%, and Pinhead Paulson has 25%. We can do better than this, folks. Let's get some voting in here, get some interaction in, because I'm about to end this poll right now. And if I do, Silly Shannon wins, although she does deserve it.
Yeah, she's not too bright.
G-Web says, Mike picks the extreme absurd stories. There are many good things that happened this week. Well, yeah, you're right. Particularly for the Moron of the Week segment, that's kind of its thing. I did go over the good news of Ohio's pending the introduction of constitutional carry to Ohio's Senate. So that's a good thing. I do like to try to have, some good stuff coming up in the show. I don't like to always focus on the negative stuff. But you know what, folks? Let's go ahead and move on to the positive, because you guys know what comes after this. I'm going to go ahead and call it. Silly Shannon is the moron of the week with 62% of the vote. So there you go, Shannon. Enjoy it.
And there we had another tale of stupidity in this week's episode of Moron of the Week.
All right, folks, let me get to the topics so that we can get to what is Roll Call 219's favorite segment, self-defense shoutouts.
Yay!
For those of you who are new to the show or who have never stuck around at the end, self-defense shoutouts are not where I'm reveling in the proposition that the bad guy won the room temperature challenge by taking a dirt nap. It is where I'm reveling in the proposition that the good guy had the means, method, and opportunity to keep the bad guy from making him or her do the same. First up is from StarNewsOnline.com. Argument between construction workers in New Hanover leads to gunfire, from Wilmington Star News by Chase Jordan from August 10th, 2021. Deputies from the New Hanover County Sheriff's Office are investigating a shooting at a construction site which sent one person to the hospital. Lieutenant Jerry Brewer, the public information officer for the New Hanover County Sheriff's Office, said the incident occurred around 2 p.m. Monday on Garrett Lee Park with an argument between 2 construction workers. Brewer said crews were building homes in the area when a worker began acting real weird, making threats to people. They got into an argument and one guy was shot, Brewer said about the incident, which appears to be a shooting in self-defense. Next up from MyNews4.com. by Ramsey Pfeffinger from August 12th. One shot killed during armed robbery at Reno business. Reno, Nevada. One person was shot and killed in the middle of an armed robbery at a Reno business Wednesday afternoon. Officers with the Reno Police Department responded to a business on the 600 block of East Moana Lane on the report of a shooting around 3:30 p.m. on August 11th. Police said the person was rushed to a local hospital where they later died from a gunshot wound. Police said all involved in the shooting have been accounted for and are cooperating with the investigation. Officers determined the person was shot while committing an armed robbery inside the business. Officers determined that no one will be arrested at this time because the shooting was an act of self-defense. Next up from WYMT.com, mother-daughter live in Lexington home where intruder was killed. What a funny headline. Should be mother and daughter save their own lives in a home invasion. Lexington, Kentucky. Police say a man is dead after he broke into a Lexington home. Police were called to the 400 block of Ohio Street for a report of a suspicious subject knocking on doors around 12:15 Thursday morning. Family members tell us that two people, a mother and a daughter, were inside that home when a man, identified by the coroner as 40-year-old Terrence McGee, broke a side window and climbed in. Police tell us when officers arrived, they found McGee in the home with gunshot wounds and stab wounds. He was pronounced dead on scene. We're told the people inside were not hurt. Dobie Mullins lives across the street and tells us he's praying for the mother and daughter. He says he knows them and he hopes that they'll be able to recover after something as traumatic as this. I think it's going to be hard. They're going to need somebody to talk to, Mullins said. I know I could never live in a house ever again if I knew something like that. Somebody like that died in a house, I can't never live there again. Police say their investigation is ongoing, but right now, no one's been charged. And last, but most certainly not least, from WOWT.com, Des Moines police say resident shot intruder in self-defense. Des Moines, Iowa, from August 7th. Police in Des Moines say a resident shot an armed intruder who broke into an apartment overnight. Police say the incident happened around 12:30 a.m. Friday when a man armed with a handgun broke into an apartment along Lincoln Avenue. Police say the intruder assaulted and threatened residents inside the apartment before he was shot by one of the residents. Investigators say the intruder fled the scene and later showed up with a bullet wound at an emergency room. He is expected to recover. Police did not release the names of the victims or the accused intruder and have not announced any arrests in the case. So there you have it, folks. Despite the fact that the lamestream legacy media would have you believe that it is all death, destruction, gloom and doom when guns are involved, they're nothing but tools. And the use of the tool, the effect of the tool, depends upon the hand that holds it. And these hands use the firearm for good. So, with that, we are at an end. I would like to thank everybody for being here. I do want to say that we have, 7 days until the comment on the pistol brace determination from the ATF is over. So if you haven't, go there, leave a comment. If you have, go there and leave another one. You know, be professional, be polite, don't make threats, don't be cussing and fussing. Calmly and rationally explain why you feel the way you feel. Let your voice be heard, folks. So far there are like 128,000 and change comments. That's phenomenal. Let's pump those numbers up, though. I want to thank my esteemed panel for coming to the show tonight. Calaveras 32 Special, is there anything you'd like to leave us with? Any words of wisdom? Anything you would like to plug?
I want to say thank you for letting me stop by. I've got some videos coming out here pretty soon, including some on products that are made by MK Outdoor Journal. That's for handmade leather holster for a pistol, as well as once I get it, I'll be reviewing. Actually, it's a hard side. It's a cell phone case that he made for me as well, all handmade out of leather. So it's if you have need of such items that are not available through your normal websites, reach out to MK Outdoors here. He very well may be able to help you out.
If you want to see pictures of that stuff, go on over to my Instagram account, and it's over there. You can look at it. And thanks for the plug. I appreciate it. I hope you like it as much in person when it gets to you. Squib, is there anything you would like to leave us with, sir?
Just thanks for the invite. Thanks for doing the show when you do it. It's kind of nice being able to close out the week just talking about these sorts of things. And I think it was another good conversation by the whole panel. Everybody have a good weekend.
You do the same, sir. Roll call. Where can people find your stuff? Anything you'd like to leave us with?
You can find me on YouTube at Roll Call 209 and everything else social media related, whether it's Twitter or Instagram. It's the same header. I would like to remind everybody to go to gearwebsites.com. It is Red Dawn week, and today is probably going to be the last day. So don't forget to get your order in so you can get a cool patch that symbolizes one of the better movies that are made by Hollywood creeps. So go ahead and do that. And like always, we'll catch you guys on the next one.
Wolverines! Speaking of G-Webs points out that the ATF changes to firearm definitions expires August 19th, and the pistol brace is next month, and he has provided links out there in the chat. So thanks, G, for that correction and for putting those links out there. I want to say thank you to everybody who came and watched this, particularly those of you who've been here for the whole time. You could have been doing absolutely anything on a Friday night, and you chose to be here. I really say it every week, guys and gals, but I say it because it's true. I'm humbled and amazed that you have come to spend this time with us. Make sure after you're done here, take a break, get a drink, go get some popcorn, do whatever. Then go over to Gizzard Gary's channel and watch Foul Territory. He always has some entertaining stuff over there with an entertaining panel, so go check that out. And what you really need to do is go over there at those links that G-Web's provided. Let your voice be heard. Speaking of let your voice be heard, particularly if you are in the Buckeye State of Ohio, you need to contact your Congress critters and elected representatives and let them know what you think. Send them a snail mail, email, telephone, telegraph, carrier pigeon, smoked signals, bicycle messengers, drum messages, anything that you have to do to let them know what you think, and never, ever, ever give up the fight. I'll talk to you guys on the next one.